Hello everyone. Today we will be continuing our Nimzo-Larsen series. Last time we talked about b3, d5. So today that is not what we're going to be discussing. We're going to be discussing b3, b6. So what happens when our opponents try to play moves that we play, so they try to imitate us. Okay, so the move that you're going to play in this position is not bishop to b2 right away. You're going to actually play e4. And the reason why we play e4 instead is, well, first of all, e4 is a very useful move, opening the bishop, opening the queen, taking central space as well. And also it cannot easily be copied. Black, yes, can play e5, but what will happen is that if white plays precisely in these positions, white will end up with a small advantage. Now, this is one of the variations that we're going to discuss right now, so we are here, so we might as well just talk about this first. When you're playing this position, imagine that you're playing e4, e5 with b3 and b6 included. So imagine you start with e4, e5, and then white for some reason plays pawn to b3, black for some reason plays pawn to b6. And believe it or not, these two moves being included in this position benefit white more than they benefit black. Here you will continue by attacking the e5 pawn, and there's two decent moves in this position. There's knight to c6 defending, or bishop to b7 counter-attacking the e-pawn. Let's start with knight to c6. Here you will play bishop to c4, kind of putting pressure on this f7 pawn. Potential knight g5s could be possible in the future. Right now it's not possible, but if knight f6, you can even go for some very nice fried liver positions with b3 and b6 included. The most testing line here for black, or for black to play, is this pawn to g6. And after castling and bishop to g7, the way white can play this position for an advantage is white has to play c3 and d4. So white has to put two pawns in the center. And here a sample line would go something like this: knight e7, d4 castles, we trade, bishop g5, pawn to f4, and yeah, here this move bishop h8 is played, not bishop g7, because f5 is a very strong move here, and f6 would be a fork. So black has to retreat back to h8 instead of h7, and after f5 captures, knight d2. We sacrifice the rook here. Knight cannot take because there's a pin, so pawn has to take, and then we play queen e1, attacking this knight, and also going to g3 to threaten some various checkmating ideas. And yeah, that's the line right here. So let's go back. So what happens if instead of knight to c6, black decides to play bishop to b7 and counter-attack our e4 pawn? Well, in this case, we still play bishop to c4, black takes, and we play queen to e2. So now notice one thing: black cannot take the knight on f3. If the knight on f3 is taken, f7 is weak, and the rook in the corner on a8 is also under attack. So this would be very beneficial. I mean, not beneficial, this is winning for white. So instead of that, what black has to do is black has to play d5, and after knight takes e5, queen to e7. Of course, this cannot be taken because this would be hanging. Bishop b5, king d8, pawn to f4, f6, bishop a3 attacking the queen here, pawn to c5, bishop c6 wins the rook in the corner. It cannot be taken because this is a fork, a royal fork, a matter of fact, because it forks the king and the queen. So that is how a game like this would go. Okay, but in this position, of course, white black is not forced to play e5, and black shouldn't play e5. It is not a good move. Instead of that, black should simply continue developing with the bishop to b7, and after knight to c3, play pawn to e6. I think pawn to e6 is probably the most testing setup. Against d6, you can play f4 and lines like that. Against e6, it's just a normal development with bishop to b2, knight to f6, pawn to e5, knight d5, captures, d4, d6. Now we're just gonna get into this line right here. We play queen to g4. And I don't want to get too in depth in this line because there's a lot of stuff here. It is a very complex position. I will just show you one super cool line where black has to find a lot of basically only moves to not lose the game. So after h5, queen to g3, we trade and we castle queenside. Excuse me. So we castle queenside here, and we develop the knight to f3, play pawn to h4, and here we get into this middle game. There are various different ideas here. There's knight d4, well, king b1 first, and then knight d4, and then bishop to f3 to take control over this c6 square. So this is just going to be a very complicated game with lots of interesting ideas. So that's going to be it for this line. I guess I will just show this to the end of how the game could potentially go. By the way, all the moves in this sequence that you're seeing are basically only moves for black that don't lose the game. So black has to find a lot of very precise moves here in order to keep the game equal and not actually lose. I think everything up until this point pretty much has to be played very precisely with black. Okay, so that's going to be it for this video. This one's and the next one is probably going to be a little bit shorter because it is not as complicated and as theoretical as the e5 and the d5 systems, which have been played many more times than this one, but this is something you should know regardless. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.